The day my HOA president knocked on my door to tell me I couldn't use a space heater on my own porch was the same day I realized I'd moved into a neighborhood run by someone who had way too much time on her hands. Her name was Patricia, and she stood there with a clipboard pressed against her chest like it was body armor, her blonde highlights catching the afternoon sun as she pointed at my perfectly harmless electric space heater sitting in the corner of my covered porch. "I'm Blake Kendrick, and I just moved to Scottsdale, Arizona 6 months ago." "Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Arizona, space heaters." But winter nights in the desert get surprisingly cold, dropping into the 40s, and I liked sitting on my porch with my coffee in the mornings and a beer in the evenings. The heater made it comfortable. Nothing crazy, just a standard tower heater from Target that I'd plug in and forget about. Patricia wasn't having it, though. She jabbed her finger at the thing like it had personally offended her. "Mr. Kendrick, I'm afraid that's a direct violation of Section 14, subsection C of our community guidelines. No outdoor heating elements on porches or patios." I blinked at her, my coffee mug halfway to my lips. "It's electric. It's not like I'm running a bonfire out here." "The rule is quite clear," she said, her voice taking on that particular tone that people use when they've memorized something word for word. "Any device designed to produce heat for personal comfort when placed in outdoor common areas or visible outdoor spaces is prohibited. This includes but is not limited to fire pits, outdoor fireplaces, and yes, electric space heaters. My porch isn't a common area. It's my porch." Patricia's smile never reached her eyes. "Your porch is visible from the street, which makes it part of the community aesthetic. We have standards to maintain, Mr. Kendrick. Property values don't protect themselves." I wanted to argue more, but she was already walking away, calling over her shoulder that I had 24 hours to remove the offending appliance or face a fine. I stood there watching her march down my driveway in her athletic, where that had probably never seen actual athletics, wondering what I'd gotten myself into. That evening, I sat on my porch without the heater, wrapped in a blanket like some kind of burrito, and scrolled through the HOA bylaws on my phone. Sure enough, there it was, buried in the fine print I'd barely glanced at when I bought the house. The language was vague enough to be annoying, specific enough to be enforceable. I was pretty sure they'd added this rule after some neighbor probably had an actual fire hazard situation, but now everyone had to suffer for it. My neighbor from 2 houses down, Dave, walked by with his dog and gave me a sympathetic wave. "Patricia get you too," he called out. "Yeah, apparently my space heater is destroying property values." Dave laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "She made me take down my wind chimes last month. Said they created noise pollution." "They were wind chimes, man. That's literally their entire purpose." After he left, I sat there shivering and thinking, I'm not usually the type to get into battles with authority figures, even petty ones. I'd moved to this neighborhood because it was clean, safe, and close to my job as an IT consultant. The houses were nice, the streets were quiet, and I'd figured an HOA meant things would stay that way. I hadn't counted on Patricia treating the position like she was running a small dictatorship. But I also wasn't about to just give up my morning coffee routine or my evening relaxation time because of some overly broad rule. There had to be a solution. That's when the idea hit me. If I couldn't heat the space around me, I could heat myself. I pulled up Amazon on my phone and started searching. Heated jackets. They'd become pretty popular over the last few years, and the reviews were solid. Battery-powered, no cords, no visible heating elements that weren't part of clothing. I found one that looked good, with heating panels in the chest and back, 3 heat settings, and a battery that lasted up to 10 hours. I ordered it with next-day delivery. When the jacket arrived, I was genuinely impressed. It was sleek, black, and looked like a normal winter jacket. The battery pack slipped into an inside pocket, and the heating panels were completely invisible. I charged it up that night and wore it the next morning for my coffee. It was perfect. I sat on my porch in comfortable warmth, watching the sunrise paint the desert mountains in shades of orange and pink. No space heater, no violation of any rules I could find. Just me, my jacket, and my coffee. I should have known Patricia would find something wrong with it anyway. 3 days later, she was back. This time she had someone with her, another middle-aged woman I hadn't met yet. They walked up to my porch where I was sitting with my laptop, working remotely as I often did. "Mr. Kendrick," Patricia said, her voice tight. "This is Barbara, our HOA treasurer. We need to discuss your outdoor activities." I looked up from my screen. "My outdoor activities? I'm sitting on my porch." "You're wearing that jacket," Barbara said, pointing at me. She had short gray hair and glasses that she kept pushing up her nose. "Every single day, all day sometimes." "Yeah, it's cold out. That's what jackets are for." Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line. "We believe you're using that jacket as a heated garment to circumvent our heating element policy." I couldn't help it. I laughed. "Are you serious right now? You're going to tell me I can't wear a jacket on my own porch?" "We're saying that deliberately using heated clothing to create the same effect as a banned heating device is against the spirit of the community guidelines." "The spirit?" I closed my laptop. "Show me where in the bylaws it says I can't wear whatever clothes I want on my own property." Patricia and Barbara exchanged looks. "We'll need to call an emergency board meeting to discuss this," Patricia finally said. "In the meantime, we strongly suggest you refrain from this behavior." This behavior being wearing a jacket in winter. They didn't answer, just walked away conferring quietly with each other. I sat there feeling a mix of amusement and anger. This was getting ridiculous. That weekend, I got a notice in my mailbox about an HOA meeting scheduled for the following Thursday evening. The agenda included several items, but the one that caught my eye was listed as discussion of outdoor comfort device policies and enforcement. They were actually going to try to ban my jacket. I spent the next few days doing research. I dug into Arizona HOA law, read through our specific covenants and restrictions multiple times, and even posted in a few online forums asking for advice. The consensus was pretty clear. An HOA could regulate a lot of things, but regulating what clothes someone wore was a massive overreach and probably unenforceable. Thursday evening came, and I walked into the community center building for the meeting. About 20 other homeowners were scattered around the room in folding chairs. Patricia sat at a table in the front with Barbara and 2 other board members I vaguely recognized. One was a man named Harold who was the secretary, thin and bald with wire rim glasses. The other was Linda, the vice president, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Patricia called the meeting to order and went through the usual business first. Approval of last month's minutes, financial report from Barbara, discussion about the community pool maintenance schedule. I sat there waiting, my heated jacket resting on the chair next to me. Finally, we got to the main event. Patricia cleared her throat and looked directly at me. "Now we need to address a situation that's come to our attention regarding outdoor heating devices. Mr. Kendrick, would you like to explain to the board and your neighbors what you've been doing?" I stood up slowly. "Sure. After you told me I couldn't use my electric space heater on my porch, I bought a heated jacket instead. I wear it when I sit outside. That's it." "And you don't see how that's a problem," Barbara chimed in. No, I genuinely don't. It's a jacket. I'm allowed to wear clothes. A few people in the audience murmured in agreement. One guy in the back said, "Wait, are we voting on what people can wear now?" Patricia held up her hand. "Let me explain the concern. Our rules about heating elements exist for safety and aesthetic reasons. If we allow one person to flagrantly work around these rules, it sets a precedent. Next thing you know, everyone will find loopholes and the rules become meaningless." "But he's not breaking any rule," Linda said quietly from her seat at the table. "I've read through everything twice. There's nothing about clothing." "The intent matters," Patricia insisted. "He's deliberately trying to undermine our authority." "Your authority to do what exactly?" I asked. "To make sure I'm uncomfortable on my own porch. I'm not hurting anyone. My jacket doesn't affect property values or community aesthetics. You can't even tell it's heated just by looking at it." Another homeowner, a woman I didn't know, stood up. "I think Patricia's right about the spirit of the rules. We can't just let people do whatever they want." "Why not?" an older man called out. "It's his porch. As long as he's not breaking actual rules, who cares?" The meeting devolved into argument pretty quickly after that. Neighbors taking sides, some agreeing with Patricia that rules needed to be enforced strictly, others saying this was government overreach at its most absurd. Patricia tried to regain control several times, banging a gavel she'd brought specifically for that purpose. Finally, Harold the secretary suggested they table the discussion and consult with their HOA attorney. Patricia reluctantly agreed, but not before shooting me a look that made it clear this wasn't over. As people filed out, Dave from down the street caught up with me. "That was wild, man. I can't believe they're actually trying to regulate your jacket." "Yeah, well, Patricia seems to have made it her personal mission. She's been like this for 2 years," Dave said. "Ever since she became president, I swear she drives around the neighborhood looking for violations. Last month she fined someone because their trash can was visible from the street for like 2 hours after pickup time." I shook my head and headed home, my jacket folded over my arm. This whole situation was insane, but I wasn't backing down. I'd done nothing wrong. Over the next week, I continued wearing my heated jacket whenever I was outside. I even started taking walks around the neighborhood in it, making a point of waving at Patricia's house whenever I passed by. Petty, maybe, but it felt good. Then I got the letter. Official HOA letterhead, certified mail. I opened it standing in my driveway, and my jaw literally dropped as I read. "Dear Mr. Kendrick, after consultation with our legal counsel, the HOA board has determined that your use of heated clothing outdoors constitutes a violation of our heating element policy. You are hereby fined $500. Additionally, you are required to cease wearing any heated garments while on visible outdoor portions of your property. Failure to comply will result in additional fines of $100 per day. You have 7 days to appeal this decision in writing. $500. For wearing a jacket, I went inside and immediately called a real estate attorney whose name I found through a quick internet search. Her name was Gloria Jensen, and her office was in Phoenix. I explained the situation, and there was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I'm sorry," she finally said. "They're fining you for wearing a jacket, a heated jacket, but yes. Mr. Kendrick, I've handled a lot of HOA disputes over the years, but this might be the most overreaching thing I've heard. Do you have copies of your bylaws and this letter?" "Yes, I can send them over right now." "Please do. I'll review everything and call you back tomorrow, but off the top of my head, this isn't going to hold up. HOAs have broad authority, but they can't regulate personal clothing choices. That's almost certainly beyond their scope." I felt some relief, but also frustration. I'd have to pay Gloria to fight this, which meant Patricia's power trip was going to cost me money either way. Gloria called back the next afternoon. "Okay, I've reviewed everything. This fine is completely unenforceable. Their heating element policy clearly refers to devices and appliances, not clothing. Even if we stretch the interpretation, personal garments fall under your individual rights. I can write them a letter explaining this, which might be enough to get them to back down. And if it's not enough, then we file in court to challenge the fine and possibly the entire enforcement action. Arizona law does provide remedies for homeowners facing unreasonable HOA enforcement. It could get expensive, though. How expensive for a case like this? We're probably looking at several thousand in legal fees, though if we win, we can request they cover those costs. I thanked her and said I'd think about it. Several $1,000s to defend my right to wear a jacket. This was America in 2025, and somehow I was in this situation. That evening, I decided to write my appeal letter myself before potentially getting Gloria involved. I spent 2 hours crafting it, citing specific language in the bylaws, explaining how clothing couldn't reasonably be considered a heating device, and pointing out the absurdity of trying to regulate what residents wore. I kept it professional but firm. I submitted it the next day, hand-delivering it to Patricia's house. She answered the door in yoga pants and a tank top, her face tightening when she saw me. "My appeal," I said, holding out the envelope, "required to be in writing within 7 days." She took it without a word and closed the door in my face. The 7 days came and went with no response. Then I got another letter. Appeal denied. The board had voted 3-1 to uphold the fine, with only Linda voting against it. I now owed $500, due within 30 days, or they'd place a lien on my property. That's when I called Gloria back and told her to start legal proceedings. Filing in court took a few weeks to get everything prepared. Gloria drafted a complaint challenging the fine and requesting a declaratory judgment that the HOA's interpretation of their heating element policy was unreasonable and unenforceable as applied to clothing. We also included a request for attorney's fees. When the HOA got served with the lawsuit, things escalated quickly. Patricia called an emergency meeting, and I received an email notification about it. The subject was discussion of ongoing legal matters and resident conduct. I showed up to that meeting with Gloria. The look on Patricia's face when we walked in together was almost worth the legal fees I was racking up. Patricia started the meeting by saying, "Mr. Kendrick has chosen to take legal action against the HOA, which means he's essentially suing all of you, his neighbors, since we all fund the HOA." "That's a mischaracterization," Gloria said immediately. "Mr. Kendrick is challenging an unreasonable fine. This isn't personal. It's about ensuring the HOA acts within its legal authority." "We are within our authority," Barbara shot back. "Our attorney said the policy covers anything that produces heat." "Your attorney is wrong," Gloria said calmly. "And I suspect if you actually consulted with them about this specific situation rather than just the general policy language, they'd tell you the same thing." The meeting went downhill from there. Several neighbors spoke up supporting me, saying the whole thing was ridiculous. Others defended Patricia and the board, arguing that rules were rules and exceptions led to chaos. One woman named Deborah actually stood up and yelled that people like me were ruining the neighborhood by refusing to comply with simple guidelines. "It's a jacket," I finally said loudly enough to cut through the noise. "I'm wearing a jacket on my porch. That's it. No one's property value is affected. No one's safety is at risk. The only thing happening here is that Patricia decided she didn't like that I found a way around her space heater rule, and she's abusing her position to punish me for it. "How dare you?" Patricia said, standing up so fast her chair scraped loudly across the floor. "I have dedicated countless hours to this community. Everything I do is to protect our neighborhood and our investments." "Then why are you wasting everyone's time and money on this?" I asked. "You could just admit this is overreach and move on. Instead, you're forcing legal action that's going to cost the HOA tens of thousands of dollars when you lose." "If we lose," Patricia corrected. "When," Gloria said firmly. "Trust me on this." The meeting ended without resolution and Gloria and I left. In the parking lot, she turned to me. "They're going to try to make this difficult. Be prepared for that. They might start looking for any other violation they can find with your property." She was right. Over the next 2 weeks, I received 3 separate violation notices. My grass was allegedly a 1/4 inch too long in one section. My trash can was visible from the street on a non-pickup day, even though I'd only rolled it out 30 minutes before pickup time. And my mailbox needed repainting despite having been painted just 4 months ago when I moved in. Each violation came with a fine, $50, $50, and $100 respectively. I documented everything with photos and timestamps and sent it all to Gloria. "This is retaliation," she said when I called her. "Clear as day. We'll add it to the complaint. This actually helps our case because it shows a pattern of targeted enforcement." Meanwhile, I kept wearing my heated jacket. Every morning, every evening, and on walks around the neighborhood. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't backing down. A few neighbors started waving and giving me thumbs up when they saw me. Others would turn away or go inside. The community was definitely divided. Then something unexpected happened. I came home from grocery shopping one Saturday to find Dave and 3 other neighbors standing on my porch. They were all wearing heated jackets. "What's going on?" I asked, carrying bags toward my door. "Solidarity, man," Dave said, grinning. "We all ordered these after your first meeting. If they're going to fine you for wearing a jacket, they'll have to fine all of us." I was genuinely touched. "You guys didn't have to do this." "Yeah, we did," one of the other guys said. His name was Tom and he lived on the next street over. "Patricia's been a tyrant for too long. This is our line in the sand." We stood there on my porch, 5 guys in heated jackets, and despite the absurdity of the situation, I felt good. I wasn't alone in this. Patricia noticed, of course. By Monday, all 4 of them had received their own letters about violations and fines. They all forwarded them to Gloria, who amended our complaint to include them as additional plaintiffs. The case was growing. The local news got wind of it somehow. A reporter from a Phoenix TV station showed up at my house one afternoon asking for an interview. I was hesitant at first, but Gloria said it might help, so I agreed. The segment aired 2 days later during the evening news. "HOA at war with homeowners over heated jackets," read the headline. They interviewed me, showed footage of my porch, and even got a statement from Patricia, who insisted the HOA was just enforcing reasonable rules to maintain community standards. The segment went viral online. Suddenly, I was getting messages from people all over the country sharing their own HOA horror stories. The national news picked it up. I did an interview with CNN and another with a popular podcast about suburban life. The whole thing spiraled way beyond what I'd ever imagined. The attention seemed to make Patricia dig in harder. She sent out a mass email to all homeowners defending the board's actions and characterizing those of us fighting back as troublemakers who wanted to destroy the neighborhood. She included a call for donations to the HOA Legal Defense Fund. But the attention also brought scrutiny. Someone sent Gloria a tip that the HOA hadn't properly filed some of their financial documents with the state. Gloria looked into it and discovered that Patricia, as president, had been essentially running the HOA like her personal fiefdom with minimal oversight. There were questionable expenses charged to the HOA account, including what appeared to be personal purchases at home goods stores marked as community supplies. Gloria brought this to the court's attention, and the judge ordered a full financial audit of the HOA. Patricia tried to fight it, but the judge wasn't having it. An independent auditor was appointed. While waiting for the audit results, our case proceeded. Depositions were scheduled. I had to sit in a conference room for 3 hours while the HOA's attorney, a tired-looking man named Richard, asked me questions about my jacket, my porch habits, and my intentions. Gloria was with me the whole time, objecting when necessary, and I kept my answers simple and truthful. The HOA's attorney seemed to realize how weak their position was. During a break, I overheard him talking to Patricia in the hallway. "I really think we should consider settling this," he was saying. "The judge is not going to look kindly on fining someone for wearing a jacket." "We have a duty to enforce our rules," Patricia insisted. "Your rules don't cover this situation. That's the problem." But Patricia wouldn't budge. We went through with depositions for all the plaintiffs. Dave told them about his wind chimes. Tom talked about how he'd been fined for parking his car on the street overnight once when his garage door opener broke. The pattern of petty enforcement became clear. Then the audit results came back. It was worse than Gloria had suspected. Patricia had spent over $15,000 of HOA money on various personal expenses over the past 2 years, disguised as community purchases. There were payments to landscapers who'd worked on her personal property but were charged to the HOA. There were supplies purchased for community events that had never actually happened. Gloria immediately filed an amended complaint adding allegations of financial misconduct and breach of fiduciary duty. This wasn't just about the jacket anymore. This was about Patricia abusing her position. The judge scheduled an emergency hearing. Everyone had to appear in court. It was a Tuesday morning in May, and the Maricopa County Courthouse was busy with various cases. We sat in a courtroom with wood paneling and fluorescent lights, waiting for our turn. When the judge, a no-nonsense woman named Judge Morrison, called our case, we all stood. She looked over her reading glasses at Patricia and the other board members. "I've reviewed the audit report, the original complaint, and all the subsequent filings. Let me start by saying that this is one of the more concerning HOA cases I've seen in a while." Patricia started to speak, but the judge held up her hand. "I'm not finished. Miss Patricia, do you have anything to say about these financial discrepancies before I make my ruling?" Patricia's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, Miss Reynolds maintains that all expenses were legitimate and in service of the community." "Then she won't mind explaining $1,500 charged to the HOA for furniture that appears to be in her personal living room based on photos submitted to the court." The color drained from Patricia's face. The photos had come from the audit, cross-referenced with social media posts she'd made about redecorating her home. "Your Honor, I can explain," Patricia said, her voice shaky. "Please do. Those were display pieces for the community center. We were going to move them over, but the center didn't need them after all, so I was temporarily storing them at my house." For 2 years, Patricia had no answer to that. Judge Morrison shuffled papers. "Here's what's going to happen. The original fines regarding the heated jackets and related enforcement actions are vacated immediately. They were arbitrary, capricious, and not supported by any reasonable interpretation of the HOA's governing documents. Mr. Kendrick and the other plaintiffs are awarded attorney's fees to be paid by the HOA. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Gloria squeezed my shoulder. Furthermore, the judge continued, I'm ordering a full forensic audit of the HOA finances going back 3 years. Miss Reynolds, you are removed from your position as HOA president effective immediately, and you are barred from serving in any HOA leadership role pending the outcome of criminal investigation, which I am referring to the county attorney's office. Patricia gasped. Barbara and Harold both scooted their chairs slightly away from her. Your Honor, that's not necessary, Patricia's attorney tried. Counselor, your client appears to have embezzled community funds. That's a crime. Whether the county attorney pursues charges isn't up to me, but I have an obligation to report it. This hearing is adjourned. We all stood as the judge left. Patricia looked like she might faint. Her attorney was gathering papers quickly, probably already mentally calculating his own liability. Barbara and Harold walked out without even looking at her. Outside the courthouse, Dave and Tom and the other guys were practically celebrating. We'd won on every count. The fines were gone, our attorney's fees were covered, and Patricia had been removed from power. Drinks on me, Tom said. We need to celebrate this. I can't believe she was actually stealing from the HOA, Dave said. I mean, I knew she was power-hungry, but that's next level. Gloria pulled me aside before we all headed out. This turned out about as well as it could have. You'll get a check for the attorney's fees within 60 days per the court order, and you can wear whatever jacket you want whenever you want. Thank you, I said sincerely, for everything. I know this got way bigger than either of us expected. That's what happens when people abuse their power, she said. Eventually, someone stands up to them. I'm glad you did. Over the next few months, a lot changed in our neighborhood. Linda, the vice president who'd voted against the original fine, became interim HOA president. She immediately started reviewing all recent enforcement actions and reversed most of them. The guy who'd been fined for his trash can timing got his money back. Dave got permission to rehang his wind chimes. Patricia faced criminal charges. The county attorney decided there was enough evidence to prosecute her for theft and fraud. It made the local news again. I watched her do a perp walk on TV, her hands cuffed behind her back, and I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. She'd brought it on herself, but it was still a dramatic fall. The forensic audit revealed even more misappropriation than the first audit had found. In total, Patricia had stolen over $30,000 from the HOA over 3 years. The HOA filed a civil suit to recover the money, and her house went into foreclosure. Her husband, who apparently had no idea what she'd been doing, filed for divorce. Meanwhile, life in the neighborhood returned to something approaching normal. The new board, with Linda at the helm, revised several of the more ridiculous rules. The heating element policy was clarified to explicitly refer only to fixed appliances and devices, not personal items or clothing. Wind chimes were allowed as long as they weren't excessive. Trash can visibility rules were relaxed. I still wore my heated jacket on cool mornings and evenings. It had become kind of a symbol around the neighborhood. People would joke about it, call me the jacket guy, but it was all friendly. The whole experience had actually brought a lot of us closer together. Dave and I became good friends. We'd sit on my porch sometimes, both wearing our heated jackets even when it wasn't that cold, and laugh about the absurdity of what we'd been through. Patricia's criminal trial happened in October. I attended one day of it, sitting in the public gallery. She looked diminished somehow, smaller than I remembered. Her attorney tried to argue that she'd had the community's best interests at heart and had just been confused about what expenses were appropriate. The prosecutor shredded that defense pretty effectively. The jury found her guilty on multiple counts of theft and fraud. She was sentenced to 18 months in prison, followed by probation and ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA. When the verdict was read, she cried. I didn't feel good about it, but I didn't feel bad either. She'd made her choices. By December, almost a full year after this whole thing started, the neighborhood felt completely different. Linda had transformed the HOA from a source of stress into something actually helpful. She organized genuine community events, like a holiday party in the community center, where families could actually enjoy themselves without worrying about violating some obscure rule. I went to that party wearing my heated jacket, of course. It had become my trademark by then. Kids would point at me and say, "That's the jacket man," which made me laugh every time. Some of the other guys wore theirs too, our little in joke that everyone was now in on. Standing there in the community center, drinking mediocre punch and eating store-bought cookies, watching my neighbors actually enjoying themselves, I felt genuinely content. I'd bought this house looking for a quiet place to live, and I'd ended up in the middle of a legal battle that made national news. But somehow it had all worked out. My porch became something of a neighborhood gathering spot after everything settled down. People would stop by in the evenings, sit in my chairs, and we'd talk about normal stuff. Sports, work, weather. No one worried about violation notices or fines. No one looked over their shoulder wondering if someone was documenting their trash can placement. One evening in late December, as I sat on my porch in my heated jacket watching the sun set over the desert mountains, Dave stopped by with his dog. "You ever regret moving here?" he asked, settling into one of my chairs. I thought about it. The stress, the legal fees, the time consumed by all of it. But then I thought about the friends I'd made, the positive changes in the neighborhood, and the fact that we'd actually stopped someone who was abusing their power and stealing from people. "No," I said honestly. "I don't regret it at all." "Good," Dave said, "because you're stuck with us now." The news coverage eventually died down, though I still occasionally got recognized when I was out in Phoenix. Someone would come up to me at the grocery store or a restaurant and say, "Hey, aren't you the heated jacket guy?" We'd laugh about it. They'd tell me their own HOA horror story, and I'd wish them luck. Gloria called me in January to let me know that the county had recovered most of the money from Patricia through asset seizure and wage garnishment arrangements for after her prison sentence. The HOA's finances were stable again, actually better than they'd been in years since Linda was running things competently. "You did a good thing," Gloria told me, standing up to her. "A lot of people wouldn't have." "I just wanted to wear my jacket on my porch," I said. And that's exactly why it mattered. It wasn't about the jacket, really. It was about someone telling you that you couldn't do something completely harmless on your own property. That's where tyranny starts, with little things. I hadn't thought about it in those terms before, but she was right. Patricia had started with small overreaches, tiny power plays that most people didn't fight because they seemed minor. But those small things added up, created an environment where she felt entitled to do whatever she wanted, including stealing. By the time spring came around, bringing warm Arizona sunshine that made heated jackets unnecessary, the whole saga felt like it had happened in a different lifetime. I still pulled out my jacket on the occasional cool evening, more out of habit and sentiment than actual need. Tom and his wife invited several of us over for a barbecue in March. We stood around his backyard, eating burgers and potato salad, and someone brought up the jacket saga. We all laughed about it now, though at the time it had felt serious and stressful. "Remember when Patricia tried to argue that you were creating a safety hazard?" Tom's wife said. "With a battery-powered jacket. Remember when she tried to fine all of us?" Dave added. "Like that was going to make us stop." We shared stories late into the evening, and I realized this was what a community was supposed to be. People looking out for each other, standing up for each other, not living in fear of arbitrary rules enforced by someone on a power trip. Linda stopped by my house one afternoon in April to talk about updating some of the HOA's official documents. We sat on my porch, the same porch where this had all started, and went through proposed changes. She wanted my input, treated me like an actual stakeholder rather than a subject to be ruled over. "I'm sorry about how everything went down," she said at one point. "I should have pushed back harder against Patricia earlier. I knew she was getting out of control, but I didn't want to rock the boat." "You voted against the jacket fine," I reminded her. "That took courage when everyone else went along with it. Not enough courage, though, not until you forced the issue." We worked together on the new documents, making sure the language was clear and reasonable. No more vague policies that could be interpreted however someone wanted. No more rules that existed just to give the board control over minor personal choices. The changes passed at the next HOA meeting with overwhelming support. The neighborhood had learned its lesson. We wanted guidelines that maintained property values and safety, but we didn't want anyone wielding the kind of unchecked power Patricia had claimed. I kept living my life, going to work, hanging out with friends from the neighborhood, and yes, occasionally wearing my heated jacket even when it wasn't strictly necessary. It had become a symbol of something important to me. The idea that you don't have to just accept unreasonable treatment from people in authority. Sometimes I'd see Patricia's old house, now occupied by a young couple with a baby. They were nice people, totally unaware of the drama that had preceded them. In a way, that felt right. The neighborhood moving forward, the past staying in the past. Gloria and I stayed in touch. She'd call sometimes to tell me about other HOA cases she was working on, and I'd share my story when it seemed relevant. She said it had actually helped her with other clients, showing them that standing up to HOA overreach was possible and worthwhile. "You started something," she told me during one of those calls. "I've had 3 new clients in the past month cite your case. People are less willing to just roll over now." That made me proud. I hadn't set out to be anyone's inspiration or hero. I just wanted to sit on my porch in comfort. But if my stubbornness had helped other people stand up for themselves, then the whole ordeal had been worth it. By summer, when temperatures soared into the hundreds and heated jackets were the furthest thing from anyone's mind, life in the neighborhood was genuinely good. The HOA functioned like it was supposed to, handling actual community needs without harassing residents over nonsense. Linda proved to be an excellent president, and when election time came around, she won by a landslide. I attended the meeting where she was officially re-elected. During her acceptance speech, she mentioned the previous year's troubles without naming Patricia specifically. "We learned that an HOA should serve its residents, not rule over them. That's the principle I'll continue to govern by." Everyone applauded. I looked around the room at my neighbors, people I'd gone to battle with and for, and felt genuinely lucky to be part of this community. Dave leaned over and whispered, "Think you'll wear the jacket to the next meeting just for old time's sake? It'll be 90 degrees outside." "So, that's never stopped you from making a point?" We both laughed. The whole thing had been ridiculous from the start, but sometimes ridiculous situations teach important lessons. I'd learned that standing up for yourself matters, even over small things. I'd learned that communities are stronger when they support each other against unreasonable authority. And I'd learned that sometimes a heated jacket is more than just a jacket. As fall approached and temperatures became pleasant again, I did start wearing my jacket occasionally. Not every day like before, but sometimes, especially on particularly nice evenings when I wanted to sit outside just a little longer than the weather would normally allow. People didn't comment on it anymore. It was just part of the neighborhood's character now, part of our collective story. The guy who fought the HOA over a heated jacket and won. The community that stood up to a tyrant and took back control of their own neighborhood. I got a Christmas card from Gloria that December with a note that made me smile. To my favorite jacket enthusiast. Thanks for being unreasonable in the best way possible. Happy holidays. I hung it on my fridge next to photos of my nephews and a postcard from a friend in Colorado. Physical reminders of the people and experiences that mattered. The neighborhood continued to thrive under Linda's leadership. Property values actually went up, which I found ironically funny given Patricia's obsession with that exact metric. Turned out people liked living in a place where they weren't constantly worried about fines and violations. New people moved in, and invariably someone would tell them the story of the jacket battle. It had become neighborhood lore, passed down like any good story should be. Usually, the new residents would laugh and say something like, "That really happened." And we'd assure them it absolutely did. I ran into Barbara, the former treasurer, at a grocery store one day. She looked uncomfortable when she saw me, probably worried I'd confront her. Instead, I just nodded and kept shopping. She'd been complicit in Patricia's schemes to some degree, but she'd also cooperated fully with the investigation once everything came out. People make mistakes. Most of them deserve a chance to move past them. By the time the second anniversary of the original space heater confrontation rolled around, I'd settled fully into life in Scottsdale. My job was going well. I had good friends in the neighborhood, and my porch remained my favorite spot to relax. Dave organized a joke anniversary party, inviting everyone who'd been involved in the lawsuit. We gathered on my porch wearing our heated jackets, even though it was a mild 65 degrees. Tom brought a cake decorated with a picture of a jacket. Dave brought a trophy he'd made that said "Best Dressed Rebel" on it. We took a group photo, all of us in our heated jackets, standing on the porch where it all started. Someone posted it online and it got picked up by a few news outlets doing "Where Are They Now" style articles. The headline I liked best was "Heated Jacket Hero and Friends Celebrate Victory Over HOA Tyranny." Standing there with these people I might never have really gotten to know if Patricia hadn't pushed her ridiculous crusade, I felt grateful. Not grateful for the stress or the legal fees or any of the difficulty, but grateful for the outcome. For the friendships formed, the lessons learned, and the positive changes made. The sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant colors. Someone suggested we do this every year, make it an annual tradition. Everyone agreed. The heated jacket anniversary, our own personal holiday celebrating the power of standing up for yourself and supporting each other. As people started heading home that evening, Dave hung back. "You know what the crazy thing is," he said. "Patricia probably thought she was doing the right thing. In her mind, she was protecting the neighborhood." "Maybe," I said, "but good intentions don't excuse bad actions, and they definitely don't excuse stealing $30,000. True. I guess I just wonder how someone gets to that point, where they think they have the right to control everyone around them." I thought about it. Fear, probably. Fear that if everything isn't exactly how they think it should be, something bad will happen. So they try to control more and more, until they lose sight of what they were supposedly protecting in the first place. We sat there in the fading light, contemplating the nature of power and community and human weakness. Heavy topics for a porch conversation, but the whole experience had given me a new perspective on these things. "You going to keep wearing that jacket?" Dave asked, gesturing at my heated gear. "Sometimes, when I want to. That's kind of the whole point, right? Having the freedom to make my own choices about harmless things." He nodded. "I'm glad you didn't back down. I'm glad we all didn't back down." After Dave left, I sat alone on my porch for a while longer. The battery in my jacket eventually died, but I didn't go inside right away. I just sat there in the cool desert air, comfortable enough, thinking about how strange life could be. I'd bought this house looking for a fresh start in a nice neighborhood. Instead, I'd found myself in a legal battle that made national news, fought against someone who turned out to be a criminal, and became known as the heated jacket guy. None of that had been in my plans, but plans change. Life throws unexpected things at you. The question is how you respond to them. Do you cave to unreasonable demands to avoid conflict? Or do you stand up for yourself, even when it's inconvenient and costly and stressful? I'd chosen to stand up, and I'd do it again. That was the real lesson in all of this. Not about HOA rules or heated jackets or any of the specific details. It was about having the courage to say no when someone tries to overstep their authority. About knowing when to fight and having the persistence to see it through. Inside my house, I hung my jacket in the closet next to my regular winter coat. I looked at it for a moment, this ordinary piece of clothing that had become such an extraordinary symbol. Then I closed the closet door and went to make dinner. The next morning, I sat on my porch with my coffee, no jacket because it wasn't particularly cold. The sun was rising, the neighborhood was waking up, and everything felt normal in the best possible way. A car drove by and the driver honked and waved. I waved back, not sure who it was but assuming they were a neighbor who knew the story. That happened sometimes now. I'd become a minor local celebrity, though that fame was fading as time passed and other stories took over the news cycle. That was fine with me. I'd never wanted attention. I just wanted to live my life in peace, sitting on my porch when I felt like it, wearing whatever I wanted, following reasonable rules while pushing back against unreasonable ones. The Arizona morning stretched out before me, full of possibility. I had nowhere to be for a few hours, so I just sat there enjoying the moment. Enjoying my porch, my coffee, my freedom to make simple choices without someone breathing down my neck about violations and fines. This was what I'd fought for. Not principle in the abstract, but this specific feeling right here. The peace of knowing I could be comfortable in my own home without justifying it to anyone. The security of living in a community that respected reasonable boundaries. I finished my coffee and headed inside to start my workday. My heated jacket stayed in the closet, waiting for the next cool evening when I'd want it. It would always be there, both as a practical piece of clothing and as a reminder of what happened when I refused to back down from a fight that mattered. The story of the heated jacket battle would probably follow me as long as I lived in this neighborhood, maybe longer. That was okay. It was a good story, one with a clear moral and a satisfying ending. The tyrant was deposed, literally imprisoned for her crimes. The community was stronger and freer. The little guy had won, and in the end I got exactly what I wanted from the beginning. The simple ability to sit on my own porch in comfort, harming no one, living my life on my own terms. That was all I'd ever asked for. That was everything.